Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Seiren. Good to see you. Good morning, Yonan. Good to see you as well. So I'd like to start. Happy Sunday, everybody. And I'm really grateful to be introducing Rachel Seiren Vilsack. She's Rachel has received jukai by Byakuren Judith Ragir in 2014. She did not grow up in a spiritual tradition and discovered Soto Zen Buddhism as an adult. Rachel is grateful to the Hokyoji community and to her Zen brothers and sisters for providing a space to practice and explore the present day application of the Buddha's and Dogen Zenji's teaching. Rachel works for a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit that believes everyone should have access to information to unlock opportunities for meaningful careers. She honors her family heritage, those who were here, and those that immigrated here. As part of her practice, her ancestors provide an anchor for her spirit and her two and four-legged family in Minnesota. So I'm happy to introduce you and I'm happy with your presence. Thank you and your practice.
Well, thank you, GD, for that warm introduction. I'm honored to be with you all today, and I'm happy to see some familiar faces, friends and fellow practitioners along this Dharma journey. Um, I want to acknowledge my Dharma teachers and Dharma siblings and my Zen family that contributed to me being here today. That does include Byakuren Judith Ragir and Ku Ken Ford, Onryu, who I feel very connected to across time and space, and my Zen brothers Genjo, Musho, Ishin. And there's a whole extended Zen group of Zen practitioners and family members who showered me with their wisdom of grandmotherly love when I was new to Zen practice and a community. That part of my bio that GD read included, like, I didn't grow up in a religious tradition, so it is of great honor to me that so many people inside the Zen community, including Hokyoji, have been so welcoming to me. I think of you all fondly and thank you deeply. Um, 10 years ago, I gave my way-seeking mind talk. It was the story of how I came to Buddhism and the teachings that influence my practice. And in preparation for today, I actually read back through the notes from 10 years ago and was pleased to see that it contained some of the stories of my family. At the time, how Dogen's fascicle shoji, or birth and death, was a touchstone for my practice, and that my devotion to practice and my Zen community, I wrote, was how I show my love. And I smile thinking of myself in that time and place, how my practice has changed and matured in certain ways, and how I think it's really a digging deeper of how I understand and manifest the Dharma. So I look forward to looking back on these words in another 10 years. It's actually an auspicious day today when GD gave me the calendar of opportunities upon which I could give a talk at Hokyoji. The date that stood out to me was today, November 30th, because it is the birthday of my mom. Her name is Sandra Savage Hillman. She lives in Duluth. We spent the weekend together. Last weekend, she drove down. We did the simple things that I know bring her joy. We would go get coffee, we would have lunch, just have the television on. She loves to shop, so I would drive her around in my car. My mother doesn't often does these things alone, as my dad passed away a few years ago, and I take good care to make my home a comfortable place for her when she visits. And I think I mention her especially because what you're going to hear from me today is a lot of reflections of mothers and women ancestors. And I recognize, like some, I have a complex relationship with my family. There's many reasons for this that include the causes and conditions of a young self who experienced a lot of medical trauma, who began to fear death, who had a mother and a father who took generous care of a very sick child. It also includes generational trauma. And I think my practice has been about recognizing and unraveling a lot of this karma for myself, for my family, because I see how it has complicated the ways that we interact or don't even today. And I was especially reminded during my mom's last visit that there will be a time when there won't be any more visits. She reminded me how many short years she has before she turns 80. And there will be a time where the me in this form doesn't exist either. I don't have any children. I don't have a lot of family. This branch of the generational tree will end with me. So that's got me thinking a lot about ancestors. I often say the 5 remembrances. Do you know these? I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I am of the nature to have ill health. I cannot escape illness. I am of the nature to die. I cannot escape death. All that I love and everything I cherish is of the nature to change. I cannot escape being separated from them. And the final remembrance, my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. So I'm dedicating this talk to my mom and the women ancestors in my family, many of whose stories I do not yet know and likely may not ever know. But I know that, like my mother and the generations of grandmothers and the women ancestors of our tradition, they endured immeasurable hardships and joys for us to be here today. So here's a little bit about those stories and how it's impacting my practice today. So this summer, I read Wendy Garling's book, The Woman Who Raised the Buddha, and it made quite an impression. Garling writes about Mahapajapati, who was, she says, the key player in clearing the way for her son to fulfill his stated mission of establishing an equal fourfold religious community of nuns and monks, laywomen and laymen within his lifetime. But as the title of the book suggests, it was his maternal aunt, Mahapajapati, who provided maternal comforts and sustenance that the infant Siddhartha needed after the passing of his birth mother shortly after he was born. This is certainly a story that I had heard, but not to the degree that Wendy Garling presented it and really showed kind of the intense devotion that was given not only to allow Siddhartha to become the Buddha, but really to impact us. Mahapajapati offered intense devotion to her adopted son. She grieved when he left home. to seek spiritual awakening. And later in life, when she returned, she was one of the first laywomen to hear his sermons. She advocated fiercely for women's rights to ordination. And there's a really beautiful story of her taking great effort to make a special robe for her son, gathering and sowing the seeds, hoeing the weeds, harvesting the cotton, weaving a beautiful cloth that would be worthy of expression of both her love and his extraordinary accomplishment, writes Garling. And when she presents it to the Buddha, when he returns, he actually asks her to give it to the Sangha instead. He kind of says, "Thank you, but I don't need this. Give it instead to the Sangha." And she doesn't understand why he wouldn't accept this robe, this gift of her love of her adopted son. And Garling writes, the Buddha's heartfelt aspiration for Mahapajapati flowed from his insight that she would benefit more in the long run, in other words, achieve greater karmic merit, by giving the robe to the Sangha rather than to himself. In this way, the Sangha too would benefit, not just her alone. Her love is now great love extending equally to all beings, no longer a personal love with attachment to his own or others' worldly happiness. And I think what really struck me in really the whole book, and certainly this particular story of offering a robe, is just the unselfishness of her devotion and the generational impact that that would have on our practice. This fall, a group of us studied Dogen's fascicle, Receiving the Marrow by Bowing. And if you don't know this fascicle, Dogen kind of cuts through some limited gendered views of the time to talk about sincere aspiration and trust in the practice are kind of the prerequisites for awakening. He writes early in the text that you attain the marrow and are invariably transmitted Dharma through your utmost sincerity and trusting heart. There is no path that comes from anything other than sincere trust. There is no direction that emerges from itself. I mean, it's also more directly a text of Dogen being very clear on gender equality in Buddhist institutions at the time and transmitting the Dharma. And so, since this is Dogen, we could spend hours unpacking this fascicle. But there are two really key themes in this text that resonated with me. Dogen recounts two interactions, two koans between monks and their eventual Dharma teachers who are women. And these dialogues show at times rude, ignorant, dismissive behavior or questions by monks to these women teachers, which, at the time might have been acceptable. But it also shows persistence and standing in authority. I'm going to kind of summarize two of these stories that really illustrated, for me, kind of these themes. There's the persistence of Moshan, who is kind of asked by this this monk who comes to her, all of these questions. Who are you? Why don't you change? And she's very strong in her response of saying, like, this is beyond man or woman. I don't have to change because why should I have to change? I just see this persistence of a woman, a Dharma leader standing in her authority and presence to kind of push back, but in a way that allowed, in this case and in many of these cases, there to be insight and realization. It also shows a teacher, Miaoshin, standing in her agency and expressing the Dharma when the 17 monks who were listening to her heard her words and achieved enlightenment. This is after, of course, we hear that she's been appointed to a temple position even though she's a woman. She's able to kind of push beyond the teachings and provide an insight that others recognize. And in this fascicle, Dogen also puts front and center that teachers are all around this. They include women, yes, but he also says, thus look to trees and rocks, fields and villages to expound Dharma. Ask pillars about Dharma and investigate with walls. When you seek Dharma, you should have an aspiration that goes beyond. If you do so, grasses, trees, and walls will give out true Dharma. All things in heaven and earth will offer true Dharma. But it was also a story for me on who has power. If the conditions of a particular time and place put one group in power, often men, in this case, when Dogen wrote this fascicle, then it takes the persistence and agency of women to step into and use their power based on understanding of the Dharma. And of course, one can easily overlook the teachings of a river or a rock. So over the past month, this has really got me thinking about the stories I know about my ancestors, particularly women in my family, and how even what I know or what I've been told is largely based on who had or didn't have power. My mom, who I mentioned earlier, is celebrating her birthday today, descends from a half Swedish, half Finnish mother. I have done extensive genealogical research on my Swedish ancestors. I know the exact place where they lived in Sweden. I know the name of every one of my descendants on the boat that took them from Sweden to Boston. I know the day they stepped ashore in America, destined for Cloquet, Minnesota. I've seen the documents. And interestingly, and not necessarily connected to my family heritage, about 4 years ago, I started learning how to speak Swedish. I can say that for the past 4 years, every single day, I have spoken Swedish. I take Swedish language classes every week. I go to Swedish language camp several times a year. And all of the places I go, people have assumed I have Swedish ancestors and grew up with Swedish traditions, which is partly true. I certainly have Swedish ancestors, but I did not grow up with any Swedish traditions, or in fact, really any traditions of the people who came before me. My mom also descends from a mixed race father whose ancestral line I can trace to a mixed race French-Canadian man who immigrated to Minnesota and married, although that's not a word that is necessarily used, an Ojibwe woman. I can read dozens of stories from books and newspapers on his life as an early settler of Duluth, Minnesota. I know very little about the woman he married. There is an 1896 newspaper article that references my ancestor, where he lived, what he did, what people thought of him, how much he owned, and there is reference to the squaw he lived with in the sugar bush before moving to the reservation in Cloquet. I've seen the Indian census rolls for my family that were submitted by agents or superintendents in charge of the reservation at the time in the early part of the 1900s, where the agent indicated the family's race as W for white, and then someone crossed it out and replaced it with an I. There is dichotomy in these stories, to be sure. Whose story gets told? Who gets to claim heritage and why? And this more recently has been the question that I've been practicing with, and for which the resilient stories of the Buddhist women ancestors are giving me a lot of strength and encouragement. Some stories and traditions are readily available. I mentioned just my Swedish ancestry. I could probably do that for many other parts of my family tree. Other stories require more investigation. The connections are thinner. They carry pain. And I think it's a little obvious why that might be. And I know some of those stories, some of them are very close, and they include cultural assimilation and racism and fear and theft and genocide. That's a part of my ancestry too. My mom is an enrolled tribal member. She has a laminated piece of paper that connects her to a community that says she's a member of a nation, and she has a legal way to identify herself. Her children, my brother and I, don't have that connection. And I've struggled kind of with the correct word here. Is it a belonging? Is it a privilege to belong? Is it a can you be a part of something when that's not how you grew up? It's not what your ancestors passed down for any number of real reasons. I don't know that I will ever walk into a room and someone will make an assumption that I have Ojibwe ancestors or that I grew up with Ojibwe traditions in the same way that it happens every time I walk into a room because I am a person who is learning Swedish. There's a lot of investigation that I have to do here. There's a lot of work that I want to understand. And as I mentioned, um, reading about the Buddhist women ancestors is allowing me to see into this. And it's also really true that I need to see other ways of how my ancestors view this. I've been recently reading more about the Anishinaabe Ojibwe perspective of 7 generations. James Vukolich has been a great teacher in my understanding of this. Maybe you know it. It's the belief that an individual's choices have the potential to impact their descendants for generations. And likewise, that an individual is affected by choices made by their ancestors. I think it would be no surprise to say that I have been struck by the connection to Dharma teachings. I learned that the Ojibwe word for great-grandparent includes the root word to be connected. All of my relations. I can use that word to mean everyone who is connected in these 7 generations. That includes the people who came before me. That includes the people who come after me in whatever form they take. And if I'm able to live a good life According to these teachings, I can affect the generations that came before me. And a good life in Ojibwe contains the parts that mean a way of living and to go along in time and space. Vukolich writes, if we were to spiritually translate the Ojibwe word for life, it would mean the eternal is moving through the impermanent. Our spirits arrive here, experience the human condition, and ultimately return to whence they came. We go home. Although our bodies may have a beginning and an end, the spirit that animates us does not. The spirit is the eternal that moves through the impermanent. At the end of a day in session, the Doan will close the day by reciting the evening message. I beg to urge you, everyone, life and death is a great matter. Awaken, awaken, take heed, make use of this precious life. In my way-seeking mind talk 10 years ago, I said, I feel that I'm making use of my precious life through devotion to practice and community. And then I listed off all of the ways that I did that, which looking back now feel very transactional, maybe a form of spiritual bypassing. I think I want to amend that. I'm going to update that statement to living in a way that can benefit others, that includes my relatives, those to whom I am inextricably interconnected, even if I don't know their names or stories. I can offer myself to others, like being a mindful leader in the nonprofit space where I work. And I can be direct in dismantling the old habit patterns and supporting a new generation of leaders to step into their authority. I can deeply investigate the karma that has been passed down to me rather than avoiding it to help heal my ancestors who didn't have the resources to do it themselves. And I can use my voice to offer my interpretation of how the Dharma teachings manifest for me in this place in space and time. I want to just say before I close and kind of open it up to a discussion and hopefully a reflection of mothers and ancestors. But I just want to say again, a special acknowledgement. Kyoku, at the top of my talk, I said a special thank you to the many wonderful Zen practitioners, of which I include you as one, who showered me with their wisdom and grandmotherly love when I was new to this practice. So a special shout out to you. And I wanted to offer, in the words and the language of my relatives who you met, Chimigwich in Demakwinado, thank you, all of my relations, and Taksumikit Alamin Schleckingar, thank you, all of my relatives. Thank you to the women ancestors, and thank you to my mom, as this is her day of celebration, and I will get an opportunity to share with her what I did today in honor of her and our ancestors. So I will say thank you and hope that we can open it up. Again, I would just welcome reflections that you have. I know several of us have studied these teachings that I mentioned. And also, I'd be happy to learn about your connections to the women ancestors in your lives. Thank you.
So please bring your voices into the circle. Seiren's invited us to offer reflections or any comments. Thank you.
Well, I sure am glad I made it to this talk. I'm sorry to have been absent for the beginning. First of all, I need to say that just the parts that I've heard have stirred up all kinds of energies in me. We each are affected by the personalities, the gifts, the constellation of individuals that we grew up with. And my family constellation was not very interactive. So as you talk about the effort that you have put into knowing what has been, and of course is continuing to become has been as we speak. It's very inspiring for me, really, because I have an uncle that I heard anyway that apparently did some digging into the past, and one of my brothers, now dead, also looked into it. So I thought I should look at this. This is just an arena where I've been disconnected, and I have long been amazed at your energy. There's something so bright about it, and so it's got iron in it. So may your life continue to go well, and thank you for contributing to mine.
Good morning, Seiren. I don't have anything in particular to say, but I wanted to thank you for your talk.
Saren, thank you for your talk. I have to say, from my own perspective, that I haven't really looked at my family tree too much, my ancestors, although I do have, somebody has put together a genealogy chart going back maybe a couple hundred years. And I've looked at it and I thought it was fascinating, but that's only half of my family. So, and then I also have heard, and I've not seen it, that one of my ancestors on the other side of my family put together a book of kind of like a family history that they were trying to sell to the family. I don't know if anybody in my family purchased one, but I need to find out, because if they have, I would like to make some notes from it, because so that would be the other half of my family. I do have some information about some of my ancestors that may or may not be true. Apparently, one of my ancestors, an uncle several times removed, was John Brown of Harper's Ferry and the Cave in Nebraska fame, which is interesting, but I would like to know more. That's the book part of the family. The other part of the family is rather kind of plain. I'm not sure. I would like to know when they actually came to this country, because I don't think that everybody was born here in that genealogy, but it's possible. I'll have to find out. One of the things that I've been finding interesting lately is learning about the women ancestors, the Buddhist women ancestors, because I feel like they've been neglected in the way that Buddhism has been taught to me, even by women priests. And I find that disturbing because that's part of the history of Buddhism. So I have purchased a book that you mentioned, that you read. I haven't read it yet, along with a couple of others, because I want to learn about this. I had hoped to attend the retreat that you guys just had, but I wasn't able to make it, and see how things go in the future to make those kinds of things. I would like to learn more about that, so I'm going to be looking into that. It's going to be one of my next readings. As far as my own family, my mother was kind of distant, and my grandmother was the matriarch. So we had a matriarchal kind of structure in that part of the family, and I don't know why my mother wasn't so much that way, but she wasn't at all. She was very laid back and relaxed, which I guess made it easy to explore things. But that's all. I guess that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I've appreciated hearing even these small snippets about family and how you think and connect to your family, and some of this investigative work, as I think I've experienced, brings up a lot of the facts and the figures and the things that I don't know, can help place who my ancestors are in a place and time. And it's so much more readily available for certain ancestors. So it's I think for me really brought up the what do I then do with this investigation? How do I use this to understand how this informed my grandparents, my relatives, even my mom and dad, who I have to say are behind me in a picture frame on the day that I received jukai. So they're here with me too. And I know that how they lived their life, how they instilled certainly their values and some of their aversions to, for instance, religion, to my brother and I, were very much a part of the causes and conditions upon which they were raised. And I think I've found this area of investigation as a way to understand how the habits that I have manifest in the world. I'm very averse to wanting confrontation or maybe show a lot of emotion to my family. I mentioned at the beginning, my mom visited last weekend. We do these things that we always do because she likes to do it, and I'm happy to, drive her around and let's go get a coffee and let's go to lunch. But we largely do that in silence. We don't actually talk much. And I know that there's reasons why that is. And I'm also kind of seeing that if a part of my practice is investigating the causes and conditions of my life, I have to look at how that interacts with my family as well. And if I want to change that, disrupt that, because I think those teachings of the 7 generations that I mentioned suggest that I have the power to change a habit pattern, a situation that can actually reverberate throughout time, throughout space to impact my relatives. And it will do that too in the ways that I connect to all of the people that I work with. I've been very lucky as a part of my professional life to be a mentor and a boss, a leader in organizations to many people. And I feel that I hope that I have given them the kind of support and encouragement and opportunity so that they can take that on into their lives and the iterations of their professional careers. Having not had children to do that for, I see, my spouse's nieces and nephews and, my brother-in-law and even my brother and other members of families that I'm close to as being a way that I can instill kind of what I know and my version of motherly love to hopefully impact them. And that will reverberate throughout generations.
I just wanted to share something that came to me out of the bloom, out of the past. One day, I was at Hokyoji, I think, when it happened. It may have come before that, but I was walking along, and all of a sudden, because I was irritated about something, I had the thought, I bet you I've been practicing with this family for eons. And what that led to was a kind of humbleness. It's like, well, I'm contributing to that in some way. And it made me realize that any kind of progress that I could make in deep understanding of how things are would be a contribution to the family history and the family karma. And that to whatever extent I could notice it, that the family karma that's out there, I mean, I've kind of met through movies, home movies, and a few stories, but not a lot of sharing about family history. But I got a little bit of it from my brother who's no longer alive. And realizing how, I mean, there were people that had many wives and disappeared and then reappeared, and who knows all what was going on there. It's like even just getting to know the people in a sangha is a challenge, and there are a ton of surprises. But it just it really kind of settled me down in my practice in a way. It's like this actually isn't about you, and whatever contribution you make will affect everybody. So I found I still find that something that really brings me back to my practice, particularly when I'm feeling angry, or I'm kind of sucking my thumb about things I don't like in my life, that kind of thing. So just thank you. I'm intrigued by the idea that you raised, Yonan, of studying some history from the book you talked about. So please let me know wherever I happen to be. My email is still working. Um, Even though it doesn't always work in Hokyoji because it's remote and it doesn't work the way you'd like it to sometimes. Anyway, thank you. Thank you too, Yonan. Let's keep talking.
I'm wondering, is there anybody who is wanting to bring their voice forward? I just invite you to bring your reflections or comments. There is something I'd like to add, but I want to wait until everybody has kind of brought in whatever reflections they would like to at this time. Thank you. Yeah, I'll just jump in. Um, Saren, I really appreciate um, your expression of the Dharma in relationship to real time. I think that's what's needed in the world today is how does this Dharma that is 2,500 years old, what is the relevance to that? What is Buddha's relevance? What is Dogen's relevance to the current conditions? And I really appreciated you bringing the story forward about Mahapajapati sewing the robe for the Buddha, and that he didn't reject the robe. He expanded it to include all beings. That was a very beautiful story. And I also appreciated your kind of the intersectionality of that there is intergenerational trauma within the Buddha's experience. And that experience, that generational trauma coming into the present, and how do we pivot that into the future? How do we acknowledge our Buddhist mothers and grandmothers and ancestors? They're not past, they're supporting us in real time. And how do we uplift that? And I also appreciated your question, who has the power? Because who has the power controls the narrative. And I feel that your expression of the Dharma is pivoting and including a more broader range of all beings, that the Dharma is not just limited to certain people in authority. It includes everybody. It includes grasses, trees, fences, and walls. So I just want to say thank you for your expression of the Dharma in real time. It's very beautiful, and may we all continue to practice together. Thank you. I'm wondering, is there any closing words that people would like to bring forward before we close our time together? Going once, going twice. Okay. So, thank you, Seiren, for your wonderful expression of the Dharma in your talk today. It was very inspiring. And if you've enjoyed Seiren's talk and would like to offer dana, Seiren generously invites you to offer it to Hokyoji's fall appeal. Thank you, Seiren. Um, and upcoming events. Tomorrow we start Hokyoji Rahatsu. We're all very excited about that. And then winter practice period will start January 26th for 3 weeks. And then Jushin, you're offering a study group on Zen in the Roman Empire. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Uh, Not in particular, no. But it's Zen and the Roman Emperor, so it's Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, so it's actually it's a men's study group. So
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. Empire, Zen Empire is a little different than the Emperor.
Zen.
And it's a men's
A
group.
little
So
different.
yeah. Okay. So thank you for that clarification. And I think that's it. And then if you would mute yourselves, we will end with the four great vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome day. Bye.